What is going on, everybody? We are back with a super fun episode, starting a brand new series where we're going to be looking at celebrities with hair loss, hair systems, and kind of tracking their journey and telling their story. Today, we're going to be looking at Elton John. Now, Elton John is somebody that no matter who you are, you know who Elton John is. You also know he's kind of zany. We've seen some of his bad hair systems or wigs or all of that kind of stuff, but he's got a really interesting story that I wanted to tell. So first, guys, please remember to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell below to stay notified, but even more so that this channel starts reaching more and more people. We've grown so much in such a short period of time. And then I have a question for my loyal subscribers at the very end, so please stick around and let me know your answer to the question. Let's jump into the video though. So let's start talking about Elton John. Now, 1967 really kind of marks the start of the Elton John story, when we start seeing him come on the scene inside of England, and we get his debut single, I've Been Loving You. This is basically what he looks like, right? So you're looking at my screen right now, and you can see that this man has some very luscious, thick hair. I don't know so much about the hairstyle, but you know, I think it leaves a lot to be desired. But he's obviously got tons of volume and density. But you'll notice that up here, that this volume, it's either one, it's already starting to recede, meaning that like some of the hair follicles have been dying off, or the cut is just absolutely horrendous. I don't know which one, but to me it looks like there's an obvious difference in the density. If we look right here, the hair is definitely longer, but the hair seems to fall easier right here. Could be because of the haircut. We see throughout 1969, he's still got a ton of hair. A lot going on here, more than I have ever had in my entire adult life. Now it's really interesting, right? Because this man had a ton of hair, more hair than most of us will probably have ever. And it's interesting because his mom used to tell him that he should enjoy his hair when he was really young. He's going to be as bald as an egg when he gets older, right? By the age of 20, she said that this guy was probably going to be bald. So maybe his father was bald. I'm not sure. But he actually developed a complex about it. Articles say that Elton John actually used to really fret about his hair loss, and he really worried about it. So let's take a look now into the 70s. So there's some photos on his website that follow his journey and look at what he went through. So we see right here that he's wearing his hair shorter on the top. But interestingly, I'm going to zoom into these pictures right here so you can see them a little bit better. We start to see a ton of diffuse thinning right here, right in this picture specifically, right? We can see that there is a lot of volume on the sides. He's also wearing it longer on the sides, which is weird. And then on the top, it's very diffuse. You can see the scalp. Unlike the hair on the side of his head, you cannot see any of his scalp. We also see that he starts to wear caps more often, hats, things like that are adorning his head. We see in this picture he's wearing a hat in a very ornate costume, just like Elton John does, and he starts to become known more so for wearing hats, right? Once again, we see in this picture that it's very fuzzy, but we can see that there's a lot of thickness and volume on the side of his head, but up here that it looks like we're seeing through the hair itself, diffuse thinning, and it looks as if that his hair is miniaturizing. Now here's some more photos that are from the 70s, right? So once again, we see lots of volume, and then we see that miniaturization that is signature to as you're going through Norwood developments, that the hair follicles are starting to shrink down, the hairs are starting to become thinner and thinner, and they're starting to look more like baby hairs. His hair looks incredibly thin in this picture right here. Not much left at all. And we can see that there is absolutely this Norwood kind of 6 look going on right here. Now, by the late 1970s and into 1980s, John had lost a significant portion of hair, mostly assumed to be from androgenic alopecia, which is male pattern baldness, but also exacerbated by his drug use and bad diet, which is something that we should consider. Now, alopecia is something that we don't really have a cure for in modern science. But let's not forget that diet, drug use, things like this can exacerbate the issue of hair loss. So that's the first place that you should be starting if you are experiencing hair loss. Now, into the 80s, Elton John really started to show that he was going through a transition, and he was very sensitive about his hair loss. Now, as of more recently, Elton John has actually admitted to, in the late 70s, having two FUE surgeries. He did not call them FUE, but he basically described them as cutting off part of his scalp and inserting the hair follicles on the top of his head. And in the early 80s, he started to exhibit some hair growth, but with male pattern baldness, his lifestyle, all of these things, he couldn't really keep up with it. Now, he has admitted to trying things like Rogaine and Propecia to solve the problem. In the late 70s into the 80s, we started seeing a completely different side of Elton John. So what we started seeing is some very ornate and very strange and very out of place wigs. Honestly, these are things that he started wearing probably because he felt so incredibly sensitive about his hair loss, and at the time this was a solution he came up with, is being extravagant, being his flamboyant self, which it really kind of fit into the persona, if you will, of who Elton John was. We've seen pictures on this video earlier, right, of him in a baseball suit that's all like glitzed and rhinestoned up, right? Like, Elton John has always been flamboyant and very dramatic. So we see in this picture right here on the screen, you know, he's obviously got something that's inspired by the English Parliament style wig, you know, and that's not believable, but he was obviously having fun with it. We see a crazy style like this, which is Elton John basically imitating the 80s kind of hair metal look. Obviously not real, but a great way to be extravagant, be dramatic, and also hide his hair loss, right? We see him here with a mohawk. I mean, this thing is nuts, dude. This guy, you gotta give it to him. He had a lot of cojones. He had a lot of confidence to go and try these styles and to do them confidently on stage. I don't know if I have that kind of confidence. This one right here is an interesting kind of like faux hawk or something with a mullet. I don't even know what that is. Now, later, as he opened up about kind of his 80s experience with hair loss and what he was going through, he commented and said, you know, that he was really trying to hide. It says that he started wearing hats more often, and he started disguising his hair so that way he didn't have to face it. There's even an experience that you can find online of him talking about one time he was awoke in the middle of the night, I believe it was, and he thought he was being robbed, and he was going to go out and check, but he was so insecure about anybody seeing him without his hair that he and he was using a wig at this time, that he actually put on his wig, went out to go face these people that had broken into his house, and it turned out that they were like handymen that were working inside of his house, but they were staring at him, and he thought that they were enamored with him being Elton John, but it turns out the reason that they were staring at him is because he had his wig on backwards. He was wearing the back and the front and the front and the back, and they were like, so it's really interesting to hear that, you know, after the fact, what he was going through mentally, right? Imagine being on the largest stage of the world, right? Like being known basically by everybody in the known world, and having to deal with hair loss, something that you're insecure about, but going on stage every single day, seeing people performing, being on TV, all of these different events where the pressure is on. You know, he's probably going through a lot, right? Now, it's really interesting. As he transitioned into the 90s, we see a completely different Elton John, right? We see these pictures and video clips where he is starting to look somewhat more natural with his hairstyle, albeit a bit strange styles, like a bit way too dense if you ask me, but we see right here definitely more natural looking than what he's been wearing. Right here, once again, more of a natural kind of British look to the hair. Again, very thick, but what I would describe a bad haircut. But you know, styles are different. So we see this transition from being extreme and dramatic into actually being somewhat believable, somewhat realistic, somewhat believable, in fact. And the 90s really is kind of the birth of where we see Elton John transforming into wearing what I believe were early hair systems at the time, or wigs that were probably more custom fitted to him. Now, if we start looking at the 90s, right, we can really start to see the progression and the development of his wearing of hair systems and having a solution that's better suited for him. Right here in this, once again, too thick, but you know, he's rocking the British bowl cut. It's a look. But we see that he's starting to transition, like in this picture right here, to more of a natural look, something more modern. Even right here, rocking an exposed hairline that looks like it has some recession built into it. Right here, a close-up of the hairline, right? It does look pretty thick and dense, but this is a style that was definitely popular inside of the 2000s. This is something that I would consider an acceptable style, and these are all fairly believable looks, right? They're not terrible looks anymore. So in the 2000s, we definitely see a transformation into the 2010s. This look right here, super natural, super good looking. You know, still got that kind of dense bowl cut kind of look. We can see the density up here is definitely decreased, and it's really starting to have just a natural appearance to it, especially considering his age. So once again, we see this right here, you know, not as much volume, not as much density on top of his head. It looks like everything's a lot more balanced, and it really looks like he's kind of putting the look together. And I think this really showcases, one, his personal journey, but also the journey of hair systems and how things have progressed in the past 20, 30 years. You know, Elton John didn't necessarily have all the technology right at his fingers as we do today, and there was people that were wearing wigs and hair systems inside of Hollywood earlier, but they were much more expensive. We talk about we'll do an episode on William Shatner soon, and we'll talk about his experience with it. But now this is something that everybody can kind of get these results that Elton John has now fairly easy, pretty easy. And it's something that's doable. It's something that you can mostly maintain yourself and have a great look. So what do you guys think about his journey? Do you think it's something that is inspiring? Do you think it's something that's silly, like the transformation he went through in the 80s? I'd love to hear your feedback. And finally, for those that are watching all these videos that are loyal subscribers to the community, I'd really like to know your feedback on this thing right here. I'm thinking about monetizing the channel, and what that means is you'll see an ad before the video. You might see like little pop-ups in the middle on the bottom. Would that really bother you, or would you be okay with that? And the only reason I'm asking you guys is because you guys are the loyal watchers of these videos. You're watching all the way through these videos. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts. I'm going to leave a comment below that says, hey, should I monetize this content? Leave a thumbs up or a thumbs down on the comment. Let me know so that way I can hear your thoughts. As always, guys, thanks for watching everything. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and we will talk soon.